The winter wind carried the scent of plum blossoms through the corridors of the imperial palace, where lanterns cast soft golden light upon the frost-laced walkways. In the heart of Chang'an, where scholars debated poetry and warlords whispered rebellion, a love story was unfolding, one destined for sorrow. Lady Shui Yangyang was the daughter of a high-ranking minister, known for her grace and intelligence. The court poets likened her beauty to the moon's reflection on a still lake, serene yet untouchable. She had been raised in the silk-laden chambers of privilege, taught poetry, calligraphy, and the art of courtly intrigue. But she had never been taught how to resist fate. One fateful spring, during the Lantern Festival, Yang Yang first met General Li Jian, a man whose name was sung in the streets for his victories at the border. He was no courtly scholar, nor a man of embroidered robes and measured words. He was carved from war itself, his hands calloused from years of wielding a blade, his eyes carrying the weight of men lost in battle. And yet, when he looked at her beneath the swaying lanterns, there was only tenderness. A chance meeting turned into stolen moments. Under the willow trees of the imperial gardens, amidst the hush of moonlit corridors, they whispered poetry to one another. She recited verses of longing, and he, though not a poet, murmured words that made her heart tremble. It was an impossible love, she, a noblewoman bound to an arranged marriage, he, a warrior bound to his emperor. But love, like a river defying its banks, found its course in secret. One evening, as the crimson sun bled into the horizon, Yanyan's father announced her betrothal to Prince Zhao, a distant cousin of the emperor. It was an honor no noblewoman could refuse. That night, she wept into the sleeves of her silk robes, her heart unraveling like a poem torn apart by the wind. Jian was called to the front lines before she could say farewell. His name became legend on the battlefield, his sword an instrument of the empire's will. Letters, though forbidden, found their way between them. Her delicate brushstroke spoke of longing, his hurried ink of undying devotion. Each character, each stroke, was a promise. But fate is a cruel playwright. The empire waged war against an enemy beyond the western frontier. The court was in turmoil, and in a desperate bid for peace, the emperor decreed that Prince Zhao must take his bride and travel west, to cement an alliance through marriage. Yang Yang, trapped in duty's iron grasp, was torn from the capital, her carriage rolling away under sky thick with the coming storm. On the battlefield, Jian received the news like a blade to the heart. He rode for days without rest, cutting through enemy lines, through storm and blood, desperate to reach her. But destiny is not so kind to lovers who defy the heavens. By the time he arrived at the border outpost where she was to be wed, it was too late. Her procession had been ambushed. The alliance had failed. Prince Zhao lay dead among the fallen guards. And Yang Yang. Jian found her in the ruins of the temple where she had sought refuge. Her wedding robes were torn, her hair unbound, a crimson stain spreading across the silk at her chest. She was still breathing when he reached her, her delicate fingers trembling as they touched his battle-worn hand. "Jian," she whispered, her voice fragile as autumn leaves. He held her against him, his body shaking, his sword useless now that the one thing worth fighting for was slipping away. "Yang Yang, stay with me." A weak smile touched her lips. "I waited. I knew you would come." The night wind carried the scent of burning incense. In the distance, the enemy was retreating, the war momentarily forgotten. But in Jian's arms, time had already ceased. He pressed his forehead against hers, feeling her warmth fade, his own tears mixing with the blood on her skin. As the last breath left her lips, a single lantern floated into the sky, its golden glow swallowed by the endless dark. Jian did not return to the capital. He vanished from history, his sword left at the foot of her grave, his legend fading into whispers carried by the wind. And so, in the grand annals of the Tang Dynasty, theirs was a love that was never written into the records of history. But in the verses of wandering poets, in the sorrowful songs of old scholars, and in the wind that carries the scent of plum blossoms each winter, their story lived on.